What up, everybody? Welcome to Own the Chaos. My name is Brad. The stock market is crazy and chaotic, and I made it my mission to help you guys own it. We have another big earnings day today. Earnings reaction, instant reactions to Visa and Intel today. Now, these are both going to be interesting because MasterCard has already reported earnings today, and Visa has kind of followed what MasterCard has done as far as stock prices is concerned. We take a look at MasterCard, and you can see that it has dropped pretty significantly, and Visa is doing pretty much the same. So can Visa have a different result on their earnings to boost the stock rather than following the same path as MasterCard? We're going to, of course, react to those. And then we have Intel, which, as we all know, has been in the absolute shitter for, gosh, what seems like years. It has been years, even before the pandemic, and it's just been really rough for them. So I'm gonna break down a couple of things, what some are our expectations on Intel and Visa, and then actually kind of revisit Tesla for a little bit in the reaction. I mean, we're coming up on the close. It's going to close somewhere around 10% up on the day. It's at 10.5 right now. We're going to react to that a little bit as a continuation from yesterday's stream. But before I get into anything, guys, I want to shout out my starting five. Hector Godinez, welcome to the starting five. Housekeeping, good to see you, my man. A Savvy Money Show, Shane Haley, I love seeing you, bro. Hey, what's up, my man? And Snookeroo, you guys are the best. If you guys missed the starting five, it could be because you're not subscribed to the channel. So make sure that you hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell for when I go live, and you might just get shouted out. You show up nice and early. So thanks so much for that, guys. I certainly appreciate it. Housekeeping says Intel might be so bad it's good. Perhaps. We will see. See a couple people chiming in as well. What's up, Jeff Chow, Stephen Hoyer? Good to see some familiar faces. Boogaloo Brown. Good to see you too, my man. Looking at the overall markets, though, they're up significantly. Looking at the S&P, that is up about 1%. The Dow is up around 0.5%. NASDAQ, the big mover today. Hold on, let me turn. I need to adjust my audio here. The big mover today was NASDAQ. That's up 1.5% or 166 points. Crude oil still working its way back up. WTI crude is sitting at $81.19 a barrel. And we don't talk about crypto too much on this channel. If you guys want to see more about that, it's over on DCTV, where we talk about everything crypto related. But Bitcoin right now is surging. It's making a really nice move. It's sitting at $23,083 per Bitcoin, if that interests you. I think that is significant. We've seen some pretty interesting breaks and resistance on Bitcoin in general. It kind of has me excited, but we will see. What's up, Lost One? I see you, my man. I see you. So very interesting that you bring this up. Cinestyle says rug pull tomorrow coming after PCE and then a bloodbath for weeks after the FOMC. I think there's certainly some potential for that, for sure. I'm not ready to say that that's absolutely what's going to happen. We did now. One thing that I will say that may keep the Fed on its warpath, is that the appropriate term? Warpath for raising rates is GDP today. Rose 2.9% year over year in the final quarter of 2022. That's above expectations, according to the Bureau of Economic Analysis. Personal consumption comprised 2/3 of domestic activity, added 2.1 as it slowed down from the prior quarter of 2.3. Initial jobless claims as well fell to 187,000, the lowest level since April 2022, which is why we're seeing such a move in the markets overall. And now I will say that I'm starting to side a little bit in Cinestyle's camp here because of that, right? Like, you're not giving these numbers aren't really giving the Fed too much incentive to kind of slow the rate hikes, right? It's expected, I believe, around 25 basis points next week from the Fed is what we're going to see from them, more than likely. I think that seems to be general consensus. Obviously, we won't know until they come out with it. But that's kind of the consensus, is at 25 basis points. And if they come in and continue to be hawkish, I think that we will see a bit of a downturn in tech, which is why I haven't put a bunch of money into it as of recently. Personally, I think that sticking around in some of the value stocks is still going to be beneficial, at least for the short term. I mean, we'll see how things shake out. Now, obviously, if the Fed throws us a wild card and they're like, hey, you know what, we're going to stop raising rates, or they give any kind of dovish tone to their to their view, I think that that's going to be a massive move in the market. And we could start talking about, us getting bullish again, big time. There are some whispers, and I'm starting to feel a little bit more bullish since the first of the year. A little. I'm not ready to pull the trigger and be like, yep, bear market's over. Not in the least. But there are signs, right? I mean, we've seen inflation come down. I had mentioned that inflation peaked back in the summer. People laughed at me, but I was right. Just putting that out there. And we have seen inflation come down ever since June. So are things still priced higher? Yes. They're probably going to stay there. But inflation is not continuing to go up year over year. It's actually coming down. So we'll see. I think the Fed's going to continue to just keep pushing until something breaks. Right now, I just don't think that anything's broken. Now, let's take a look at Tesla real quick before we get into these Intel and Visa expectations. Now, you guys might have been around while we were reacting to Tesla. The stock is up 10.5%. I mean, check that out. What a strong move after hours. This popped. When we were reacting to it in the first 30 minutes, there wasn't much movement at all. And in fact, Tesla was pretty much flat on the day in after hours trading. And then all of a sudden, it really started to push up after Elon Musk's call. He made a lot of promises, though, that I'm not really ready to say that it's all systems go. The stock's up 10%. It's up 40% since the first of the year, which shouldn't be overlooked. But I just really struggle here. On one hand, Elon Musk talks about a severe recession in 2023. That's what he's expecting. And then by the same token, talks about how, the Cybertruck's coming. How many times have we heard that? He announced the Cybertruck production will be delayed until the summer. We've heard that before. Volume production being commencing in 2024. Company's volume growth guidance for 2023 of 38% was also below the long-term target of 50%. Yet the stock goes up. That makes no damn sense to me. I know that they had record earnings, record profit, record revenue, all of that. But to me, this rally in Tesla makes zero sense. So now, granted, there's been a lot of rallies in Tesla that make zero sense, and it is overvalued from a fundamental standpoint. And we've talked about the reasons as to why, right? And again, I'm really not trying to poo-poo on Tesla, because I actually do like Tesla a lot. I love the company. I love what they're doing, but it's priced at 33 times next year's earnings. I just don't get the move, and I don't understand why it's up 40%. You can make the argument that maybe it's oversold. It was oversold, but this move now, I would not be touching it here at 160. It can go to 500 for all I care. I really don't. I just, my own convictions and my own way of analyzing things just doesn't lend itself to this type of move, especially not like it used to. So I think that Tesla, to me, this 11% move as we go into the close of the day, is something that I would probably just be cautious about. Carlos says shorts are covering. Could be a very valid point. Fernando Pereira, what's up? Good morning. Good afternoon. Sorry. Please, thoughts on Microsoft run given after week guidance. Microsoft, I think, was a little bit more of, it's up 3% today, but it's just moving with everything else. Microsoft is actually an underperformer compared to all the other big tech stocks since the first of the year. So, it's a decent move. I think that you look at Microsoft and in stocks in general, they're all forward looking. So I think investors are just looking at this. Okay, it's finally starting to get to a point to where it's an attractive price, especially from a fundamental standpoint. And I think that's why Microsoft is moving. Let's get into some of earnings for today. So as I'd mentioned, Intel is going to be reporting. It's actually making a strong move going up into the close of the day. It's up around 1% now. Was pretty rough looking the beginning of the day. A couple of things that I wanted to make note of that I have written down here. So Intel's continued troubles in the PC space are well known, as we have talked about before. Some analysts are saying that the company has continued to make progress in excess inventories and hopes to have it under control soon. We actually heard about that last quarter. Investors will also want to hear any updates on how Intel has fared obtaining one-year exemptions on export regulations to China, given that it has facilities in the country. Gelsinger, the CEO of Intel, also mentioned that Intel is in talks with Italy to build a factory in the country, but also in talks with other European countries as well. Um, Cloud data center spending remains solid in 2022. That was up an estimated 32% year over year, but growth is expected to slow down considerably to just 7% year on year in 2023. Could that be higher? Could we see a higher guidance from Intel? We're going to have to watch out for that. A consensus of analysts expects Intel to earn 20 cents per share on $14.5 billion in revenue. Okay. That is Intel. JP Morgan also believes that Intel's weak position in the data center is likely to persist for some time. So a lot of bad sentiment on Intel. Sometimes that can lead to contrarian type moves. So we'll just have to wait and see. Could be a situation in which it's so bad it's good, as someone had mentioned earlier. Now, Visa is expected. This is your Visa chart. This is a 5-minute chart here. Is expected to earn around $2.58 per share on an adjusted basis in its last quarter, according to average analyst estimate. Revenue's consensus is around 5.8 billion compared to 5.76 in Q3 and 5.22 billion in Q4 of 21. Gross dollar volume is expected to increase to 2.21 and 2.21 trillion according to Visible Alpha consensus. That's up from 2.07 trillion in Q3 and from 2.11 trillion in Q4 of 2011. Visa is always a solid stock, in my opinion. The company's not going anywhere. We take a look at the daily chart here, and obviously it's been painting a pretty decent picture since its bottom back in October. We look at the weekly chart, though, not anywhere near what those highs were, although we did see a surge in that. We're coming up on the close here, so I'll go back to the 1-minute chart just so we can see some immediate reactions. Here's your 1-minute chart on there. And Intel looks like it's starting to surge, continuing to surge, going right into the close. I always have a bad feeling when stocks do that. When they run up into the close like that, it always makes me feel weird. Always makes me feel weird. Okay, buy more Nvidia. Got it. Yeah. No kidding. Fulcrum says go full screen. I keep going back and forth with this. We'll go full screen. There you go. As it runs into close. Some people I had some feedback last week about not going full screen. I'm just going to play around with it. See how people feel. But here you go. There is Intel's stock price as it went into the close at $30.09. It was the official close there. Visa closed slightly down, not a big deal there. $224.76 at the close. And we will continue to react here. So Visa is actually starting to pump up here. As soon as I get those numbers in, I will, of course, share those with you. Have them pulled up. Have my little news feed pulled up. How you guys doing, though, as we wait these earnings? How you feeling? We feeling good about today's earnings? Anybody in Visa by chance? Anybody in Intel? Anybody decide to take a chance on Intel? Appreciate that feedback. Is that Timo? Appreciate that. KRG, Timo KRG. Appreciate that. Looks like some pretty basic low volume movement here on Visa. Again, this is the 1-minute chart, just so we can get some real-time action on this. The top of the screen is flipping out because, it's something with StreamYard. Here, let's just do this. We can get it to where it's not doing it. I just hate this because it just shares my full screen and it's not just the window. I have to get a different, here you go. Now, no more blinking. INTC looks like it is tanking here. So let's go ahead and take a look at Intel. Looks like those numbers might be in. That stock right now is down around 6% and falling. For what I said earlier about how I always feel a certain way about stocks that run up into the close. Yeah, this is one of those reasons as to why. Intel revenue came in at 14.04 billion. The estimate was at 14.5. Remember what I mentioned about that? So pretty strong miss. They missed by 500 million bucks, just about, on revenue. Earnings 10 cents per share. The estimate was 19 cents, and this is just falling off my chart. Let's come out to the 5-minute just to kind of get us a better view here. So close the day at $30.09, now sitting at 28. It's down around 6% after hours and falling, it looks like. literally, this is just feels like a broken record. Every time I cover Intel, this is what I get off of these earnings. Oh my God. It's early though. They did miss those earnings, but let's see what else they have to say. Last time, I believe we saw this initial move down, and then Intel came in and talked about how they were cutting costs and improving their inventories, which then actually moved the stock back up. So the earnings are far more than just the earnings per share and revenue, right? There's a lot more to dig into. So as soon as I get some more numbers, I'll be happy to share those with you. I'm looking at Visa and I don't see much movement there just yet. So we'll come back to that if I do. But so let's just stay focused on Intel for the time being. But as per the usual, if you guys are just tuning in, Intel missed earnings. Shocker. Anybody? I don't know. Did I see anybody chiming in as to whether or not they traded Intel? Anybody go short on Intel by the way? Just out of curiosity. Oh, here we go. Danny Level said, I'm in Intel, not expecting much from this quarter. Will went short on Intel, might regret this. Well, bro, I'm happy to say you're having a good day. It's now continuing to fall. It's now down around 8% after, yeah, there you go. After hours here, it's still falling. It's now down 8.25. Let's see here. Visa. Luis is bullish on Visa. Okay. Very interesting considering that MasterCard had a pretty terrible quarter. They actually missed. It was down around 2% today, thereabouts. They expect fiscal year 2023 revenue growth on a GAAP basis in the low teens compared to the Everscore's ISI estimate of 12% and the Street's estimate of 13%. So pretty rough day for MasterCard. Hopefully Visa has a better day. Checking back in with Intel here. It is starting to climb back up, giving back some of those losses or clawing back some of those losses. Now only down around 6.5% compared to the over 8% we saw. So let's go ahead and see if I can find some more info on Intel. Doesn't look like any of it's good by the looks of it. Once again, if you guys are just tuning in, first of all, I would appreciate it if you hit that thumbs up. Thanks so much for doing so in advance if you're liking the stream so far. But Intel came in with 10 cents per share. Actual 19 or 20 cents per share was the estimate. So pretty big miss on earnings. Then they came in and missed on revenue as well, pretty badly by about $500,000. 14.04 billion was the actual revenue. Expectations were at 14.46. And so that is why it's down right now. I'm looking to see what else there is on Intel as far as why we're seeing this move down, but so far it's looking like it's just based off earnings. Looks like Q4 Client Computing Group revenue was down 36%, citing lower revenue on PC demand, softening primarily in consumer and education and customer inventory reductions. That is not good. We knew that was going to be low, but I don't think anybody was expecting it to be that bad. They guide to they guide Q1. Here you go. This is according to Market Rebellion. They guide quarter one, the current quarter that we're in right now, a loss of 15 cents versus a 26-cent estimate. So they're expecting the coming in at a loss in this current quarter that we're in right now. Guidance for revenue is 10.5 to 11.5 billion. The estimate was 14. You can't get much worse than that, guys. You can't get much worse than that. That's your Intel numbers. Visa looks like it's moving here. It's popping now after hours. It's up around 1.5%. Looks like it may actually indeed have a bit of a different move here. Look at that boner candle. My goodness. Big old boner out of Visa right now up 2% and climbing, it looks like. That thing popped right off the charts. Let's readjust here. There we go. So it popped up, now sitting up around 1.5%. As soon as I have those numbers in. Let's see here. I don't have them just yet. Let me see. Oh, here we go. Visa came in, revenue is at 7.9 billion. A beat on revenue that was compared to the 7.69 that was expected. Huge move on that. Visa adjusted earnings per share, $2.18. As mentioned, it was right around $2 was the expectation. So a very strong beat here. They reported Q1 earnings per share of $2.18, 17 cents better than the analyst estimate of 201. Revenue for the quarter came in at $7.9 billion versus the consensus estimate of $7.7 billion. As I had mentioned, just wanted to repeat that in case you guys didn't catch it. But Visa had a pretty strong quarter. Guidance, of course, is always what most investors are looking for, in case there's just something else. But right now, I'm not seeing anything on guidance just yet. As soon as I have those numbers, I will share them with you guys. Let's see how you guys are looking right now. Yep. Chimed in. Thanks for sharing some of the info, guys. Appreciate you. Tony B says there's a massive semis glut, yet Nvidia, who said nothing, mind you, up $60 this month. I know. Nvidia is just a whole different beast. Yeah, pretty solid beat on Visa. If you guys are just tuning in, hit that thumbs up. I certainly would appreciate it. Checking in on those likes, by the way. I got about 28 likes to the 221 of you guys are in here. I know that we can do better than that. So if you guys are appreciating the stream, I would appreciate you if you just hit that thumbs up button and help show the world that Own the Chaos is back. We're reacting to these earnings, baby. Thanks so much. Appreciate the support. All right, so Visa is doing great because people are broke. We have to understand, though, people still have to pay that credit card bill. So they're still getting good revenue. It's not just about how much they're spending on credit. It's how much they're actually raking in on money. So believe it or not, there's still a pretty decent amount of money out there floating around as far as liquidity is concerned. Now, we did see reports about higher credit credit balances. I believe a couple of weeks ago, we talked about that. Record credit balances, actually. But it seems as if people are still raking it in. Visa Q1 total processed transactions, 52.5 billion compared to the 52.9. So that was a slight miss. Q1 payment volume, 3.01 trillion. The estimate was 3.16. So it could be why it's starting to give back some of those gains. As I'd mentioned earlier, I believe it was increased to 2.21 trillion is what we were expecting. So that is possibly a cause for concern. I don't think it seems to matter a whole lot. GAAP net income of 4.2 billion or $1.99 per share, and non-GAAP income of 4.6 billion or 218 per share were the actual earnings for Visa. And that's why the stock's continuing to move here. Let's see here. Visa grew net revenues 12% year over year. Wow. That is crazy. 12% growth year over year. Unbelievable. Checking in on some other things on Visa. Just want to see if there's anything else worth sharing. Don't see anything just yet. As soon as I do, of course, I will share that with you. Okay. Nothing just yet, but just to recap, Visa did come in and crush on earnings per share, $2.19 versus the 201 that was expected. And then Intel, hop back over to Intel real quick. It's still down around 6.5%. Those earnings were about as bad as you would expect. They guided down a loss of 15 cents versus a 26-cent estimate for the quarter that we are currently in. They missed on earnings per share, came in at 10 cents per share versus the 19 cents that was expected. Also missed revenue by $500 million. And it's not great. Adjusted revenue for the current quarter that we're in as well, guided to 10.5 to 11.5 billion. The expectation was 14. Just all the way around bad for Intel. Not good at all. I mean, does anybody think, put some comments in the chat. Is Intel going to get bought out one day soon? Like, is there any saving Intel at this point? It's been years since they've actually had good results. You know what I mean? Like, really good results. Danny Level says, I'm surprised that Intel isn't down more. It probably will be. Give it till tomorrow. Tomorrow will probably be more. And if Intel does get bought out, who buys them? Why would anyone buy them? Just to take up market share? I mean, you have to think about this. Intel's still bringing in some serious cash flow. It would just take the right person to come in and turn it around, right? I wouldn't say it would be Nvidia. Tony says probably Nvidia. Wolfspeed maybe. This is where I'm headed. I think it could be Stop Console Wars is on the same page I am. I was actually thinking Apple. Remember, was it 2.5 years ago, 2 years ago, that Apple broke away from Intel and started making their own chips? What if they went back and just bought Intel? Now, Apple never buys anybody, but they have a shit ton of cash sitting in a big giant pile just doing nothing. You would think that they would do something with that sometime soon. We'll see. Abhi Patel says Intel will be opening tomorrow and open in green because of it's such a cheap price. Yes, well, so he thinks that there's going to be some people are going to try to catch this falling knife. Maybe. I'm not quite sure about that. Andre says the new CEO just came in. That's fair, but man, it is awful. It is awful. Interesting. I see. Now we're thinking outside a little of the box a little. And Nice says you think a foreign company would buy it just to use the name? Potentially. It mentions Taiwan Semi. Could be. Taiwan Semi has the cash for this. Yeah, Ganesh also chiming in on Taiwan Semi. That's possible. They have the ability to do it, I think. Timko says, I don't see anyone buying Intel when they can just kill it. I don't know, man. I mean, at the end of the day, it's still $14 billion in revenue, right? It's still $14 billion. That's a shit ton of money still coming in. You're talking $60 billion in a year in revenue that nobody wants that? Nah. Somebody will want that. Somebody will want that. Checking back in, it's still falling here. It's now down 7%, starting to retest those initial lows that we saw in the reaction. If you guys are just tuning in, Intel did miss on earnings. They missed a loss of 10 cents. The expectation was, I'm sorry, they came in at a positive 10 cents. The expectation was 19 cents. They missed revenue by $500 million. The big kicker here, though, was that they are expecting a loss of 10 cents in the current quarter, as well as missing guidance on revenue for the current quarter by $3 billion. It's just not good. Just not good. Not good at all. How much would it take to buy Intel? That's the thing. It's going to take a lot. It's going to take a lot. Intel's market cap right now, as it stands, is sitting at 122 billion. So it's going to have to take a big giant to come in and buy them up. 122 billion is the market cap. So even though it's sitting at $30 and they are just abysmal, over the last year, the stock is down 41%, 42%, we'll call it. Over the last 5 years, if you've been in Intel for 5 years, you've made no money. And in fact, you've lost it. It's also down 40% over the last 5 years. Going back 10% or 10 years, and it's up 41%. But if you've been in Intel over the last 5 years, it has been brutal for you. Brutal. Should have put your money in AMD. Just absolutely brutal. Let's see here. Timo says, I bought Intel at 26. Just hope I can safely sell tomorrow. I hope so too, bro, because we're getting dangerously close to the 26 right now. It's now down 8% after hours. Looking like the pressure's still there. Could be a turnaround play, potentially, says Andre. Potentially. I just don't see it. You got dividends for the last 5 years, but those dividends aren't making up for the losses. It's down 40%, my man. The dividend yield on this, let's see, dividends on Intel. Dividend yield forward is 4.92%. That's not great. 2.85%. 4-year average dividend yield. The stock's down 40. That to me does not make up for the losses. Not worth it. Not worth it when this last year was down 42%. Tony B agreed. Intel's a dog with fleas. So many better semiconductors out there. AMD, I love AMD for sure. Let's not forget too, if we're looking at semiconductors, Qualcomm is also the sleeper out here. Nobody talks about Qualcomm, and they do crush it. It's been a rough year for them, just like with any other of the semis. We look out at the weekly chart, you can see that it hasn't been a great year for them. But here's the thing about Qualcomm. Okay, Qualcomm, you compare it to the valuation of Qualcomm compared to an AMD, it is dirt cheap. And Qualcomm is right there with AMD and NVIDIA as far as I'm concerned. Their forward PE, 12 times next year's earnings. This is a semiconductor that is trading at 12 times. You want to talk about AMD and how expensive that is? That's sitting at 21 times. NVIDIA, don't get me started. That is sitting at 59 times next year's earnings. You want a good, cheap quality, and I mean quality, semiconductor, Qualcomm's where it's at. Not financial advice, just my opinion, but that's how I feel about Qualcomm in general. If you guys are tuning in to check out Visa's earnings, they actually crushed it. You can see this nice little boner candle here on the 5-minute on those reaction to those earnings. They actually came in, did quite well. Beat on earnings per share, and then also beat on revenue quite handsomely. If I do say so myself, I need to get a reminder on just exactly where these earnings are. Let's see. So they came in 218. That's what it was. $2.18 versus the 201 that was expected. And some pretty good numbers on revenue. 7.94 billion versus the 7.7 billion that was expected. So pretty decent crush on earnings for Q4. They said, quote, in our fiscal first quarter for 2023, Visa grew net revenues 12% year over year. And that is crazy. They saw stable payments, stable payment volume and processed transaction growth and a continued cross-border travel recovery. They actually mentioned, and we heard this from, I want to say it was JetBlue. JetBlue said that the airline company, JetBlue said that they're seeing travel exceed 2019 levels for international travel. That bodes well for Visa and American Express too, might I add. Payment volume for Q1 rose 7% year over year in constant dollars, with cross-border volume up 22%. Processed transactions up 10%. That compares with Q4's payment volume growth of 10%, cross-border growth of 36%, and processed transactions increase of 12%, as I mentioned earlier. Total payments of volume of 3.01 trillion versus the visible alpha consensus of 3.11. So slight miss on that one. But everything else about this report is damn good. Total operating expenses for Visa was 2.85 billion, rose from 2.7 in the previous quarter. Also, increase in expenses, but that's to be expected. And from 2.28 billion in the year ago period. Not really all that bad there either. So overall, Visa doing quite well. Not obviously a barn burner by any chance stretch of the imagination, as it's only up 1.5%, but it's certainly better than MasterCard did today, which ended the day down 1.33% on some pretty poor reactions to those earnings. And MasterCard's actually reacting to Visa, ironically enough, right now as well. Checking back in with Intel, that stock is still getting absolutely hammered. D Nice chimes in, says, do not fight the trend on Intel. Couldn't agree more on that. Stop Console Wars chiming in on my Qualcomm comments. I love Qualcomm because they're closely tied with my GSAT hold with their Snapdragon modem. Yeah, Qualcomm is legit. Thing about Qualcomm is not leading in anything. I would agree, but they're still growing. They're not leading in anything as far as growth is concerned. I don't disagree with you on that. I'm looking at it as it is a solid company that is grossly undervalued. That's the play I'm looking at. It's grossly undervalued. They do have earnings coming up as well, so we'll certainly take a look at those and we'll react to those as those come in. I believe it's next week we'll hear from Qualcomm. But I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with, the leadership there. I'm fully aware of that. But it's just when you compare the valuation here, it's just mind-blowing. 12 times next year's earnings. I mean, that's wild. 12. I mean, what did I say Intel's was? I don't think I mentioned what Intel's was. Intel's is at 15. So Qualcomm is worth less than Intel? Give me a break. Savvy Money Show, great point. Qualcomm's not leading, but their chips are in most things. Lots of cell phones out there. And Qualcomm's also investing heavily into Web3 as well. Abby, you don't have to keep spamming the chat. I saw it. I wanted to get to our reaction to those earnings. I'll get to your question in a moment, but please stop spamming the chat. I'd appreciate it. Thanks. Hit that like button, guys. If you're just joining, I certainly would appreciate it. 66 likes, 214 of you guys watching. I think we can pump those numbers up. What do you say? If you're enjoying the stream so far, I certainly would appreciate it. Thanks so much for that. And just chiming back in to recap on Intel here. They came in and missed on earnings. 10 cents per share was the actual. The expected was 19 cents. They missed revenue by about $500 million. Not great. And they also came in and talked about the current quarter that we're in and gave guidance on that. The current quarter guidance is at a loss of 10 cents. The estimate was 26 cents. So let that sink in. Revenue expectations also throttled back. $10 billion effectively. The expectation for the current quarter was around 14 billion. So really, really rough. Really, really rough earnings for Intel. Visa came in, crushed earnings. The stock's doing extremely well, and I'm loving it. Okay, let's check in on some questions, comments. Guys, let me know what you're thinking. How do you feel about Intel's earnings? Does anything surprise you here? Anybody, we saw a couple people went short going into these earnings, so they're having a great day. Anybody taking the other side of this coin? Is there something to be excited about with Intel? Anybody making the decision to potentially go long on Intel over the next couple of days? Just out of curiosity, and give me some reasons as to why. What do you think? What do you like about Intel? Is it one of those things where it's just so bad it's good, and you're just going to play the overreaction? Is it an overreaction? I don't know. I think honestly, it could be a lot worse. It should be a lot worse than 6%, 7% where it's at right now. I think. Give me some reasons as to why, if you guys are going long on Intel, why you should go long on Intel. What are your arguments? Ryan K, we already got the guidance for Intel. They actually guided down, so that's not going to be a good argument there. Okay. M. Nice says chips will continue to be needed and used, but R&D side of things are getting more and more competitive in a deflationary environment. Also, consider that R&D is a huge expense for companies too. So they could be cutting that as well. Jack S. Going long at the open as Intel is 8 times average FCF. Yeah, but there's a reason for that, right? Paul Goggin, oof, that's rough, man. Bought Intel at 55. You just love getting beat up, don't you? That's rough, man. That's rough. Glutton for punishment there. Let's take a look. So that means effectively, and I'm just speculating here, you've been in Intel since January of last year. That was the last time it was anywhere close to 55. So you've at least been in that long. Good on you, man. That's commitment. That is commitment, bro. Andre says, I'm going to buy some next week. Playing on the dividend, turnaround play, new CEO, a new chip plant in U.S., massive U.S. credits for domestic manufacturing. Potentially. I like where your head's at least. At least you're not just winging it, but you do have some arguments. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but it's your trade for sure. Masson said that Intel is building a huge factory in Germany, but the demand has to be there. And I think that's the thing that I'm struggling with. It's like I get that they're building a huge factory in Germany. We've covered that here and in the US. But if demand is down, which is what they're citing, you could have these huge factories, but you got to have people that are willing to buy your shit. That's the big problem. Savvy Money Show, I'd like this. Intel should cut the dividend. That is the only thing saving it. Once that's cut, it's a dead duck hoping for a bailout from U.S. government. They'll try to stay afloat selling phone and laptop business. That seems like that could be where they head. next. They're first in line for the next gen EUV machines. ASML might catch up to TSMC's. That I like ASML for sure. Jackass, markets are short-term irrational voting machines. I'm here for the long term. Oh, God. Find another semi anywhere close to 8x cash flow. But what are they? Yeah, I get what you're saying. The profitability, the profitability and growth aren't there. That's why people hate it. That's why people are, and quarter after quarter, this is what happens. I get what you're saying. I'm not disputing that. The growth here is the growth slowed year over year. This is before this quarter. So I'm just basing it off of last quarter's numbers. It's down. It's losing growth 11.5% year over year. It's not good. And $10 billion versus $14 billion expected is a huge miss on guidance for this current quarter, too. Profitability wise, it's good, it's okay, but it's on par with the rest of the industry. It's just average. 46% gross margins, which is basically what everybody else has. And actually, I think Apple's more than that. I think Apple's somewhere around 50% gross margin, gross profit margin. So, I hear you. I hear you there. It's not. So, Jack, I hear you, man. They're just not any more profitable than anybody else. Let me put this in perspective for you. For anybody else who's watching. And I'm just blindly going at this right now. I don't even know what AMD's is. AMD's profit margins are 51%. And they are growing like crazy. They're growing 50, almost 54% year over year. That's why AMD has the valuation they have. Intel does not have that. Is Intel undervalued from a PE standpoint? Yeah, but there's a reason why the PE is down where it's at. It's because they can't deliver on their earnings. They just can't. Great point, Savvy Money Show. Profit can soon turn to loss if Intel cannot turn it around. And they have been struggling for years now. I love the conversation, though. Keep it coming. Keep it coming. Bear flag on Intel. I don't know. Let's take a look. Let's take a look back at the chart here. So this is your weekly chart on Intel. Obviously not great. Let's come back here. So this was, you could make an argument that potentially Intel has made a double bottom here at 25, but it's starting to threaten to come back down to that 25 level. Last quarter was a loss. Yep. So, what if it's slightly more profitable? You're overpaying. Yeah, I mean, maybe, says Jack. I mean, maybe. That to me just isn't a strong argument. When you are looking at Intel that is slowing growth at 11% year over year, and you compare it to something like AMD, that's why people pay the premium for AMD, because they're growing at 54% year over year. That's why the valuation's so high. When you typically, now I'm not saying everything, but typically when you look at valuations like that, for example, a CrowdStrike, right? Let's take a look at a CrowdStrike. That stock is absolutely insane from a valuation standpoint, but valuations and PEs aren't everything. They're a tool in what you use to, do your own due diligence, of course. And you can see it's trading at $104 per share. Is what it closed at today. Had highs of $298. But this is a stock that is grossly overvalued from just a PE standpoint, right? And I know I'm not comparing apples to apples, but I'm just trying to use this as an example of sometimes forward PE doesn't tell the whole story. CrowdStrike is trading at 67 times next year's earnings. Why? Because the growth is absolutely insane. They're growing at 60% year over year. Profitability is at 73% gross profit margins. That's insane. That's why people pay extra for this. That's why there's a premium on it, because the growth is absolutely nuts and the industry is growing right along with it. And that's why AMD, when you look at them and compare it to something like an Intel, when they're growing at 54% year over year, their profitability is more than Intel. That's why AMD is more attractive. Now, I understand what you're saying, Jack, and anybody else who might be making the argument for Intel. But right now, as it stands, they just aren't giving us anything or any good reason why we should like them, other than the fact that the stock's down and it has a cheap valuation, and maybe it's got a decent dividend. But the dividend doesn't make up for the stock performance at all. So I am understanding. This is actually why I like Meta, by the way. The cash flow, the free cash flow, Meta's got $40 billion of free cash flow. I actually like it. That's why, it's one of the reasons why I like it. But that's because Meta's growing still. It's still a growth stock. But I'm trying to understand what you're saying. Here's a good example, okay? Meta Platform has $40 billion free cash flow. Gross profit margins on Meta, 80% gross profit margins. Their growth is marginal, 5%, but it's not a loss of 11. It's not down 11%. They're not, slowing growth like that. Profitability is 80%. That's a stock that I like that has free cash flow like that. That makes sense to me. You look at the valuation there at 16 times next year's earnings. Meta Platforms, while they've had some struggles, that's a value for me personally. Just my thoughts. I love the arguments that you're making, Jack. I really appreciate the conversation. Thanks so much for participating in today's live stream. I really appreciate this. I would love to continue to have conversations like that with people. And this is what makes being on YouTube so great, making the comments like this. And honestly, appreciate the respect too. I appreciate you're not just shitting on me and we're just having a constructive conversation. It means a lot. So thanks for that. I'm going to move on. Just want to react a little bit to these earnings and do a little bit of a recap. Intel missed on earnings today pretty badly. Let's go back to the 5-minute chart so you guys can see what's going on here. Obviously not great. Stocks down 7.5%. They came in and missed on earnings. They came in at 10 cents per share. The expectation was at 19 cents. They came in and missed revenue by $500 million. The real story here, though, is guidance. They came in and missed on guidance significantly. They're projecting a loss of 10 cents, while the expectation was around 26. They came in and also missed on guidance for revenue pretty badly by about $3 billion. They came in and guided to $10 billion revenue, $10.5 billion revenue for the current quarter that we are in, when everybody else was expecting, the street was expecting $14 billion for the current quarter. So not good for Intel. Guidance is pretty bad. On the flip side, Visa actually had a decent quarter too. They crushed it. $2.19 was the actual earnings per share there, and revenue also came in much higher than expected at $7.94 billion versus the $7.7 billion that was expected as well. Guys, it was a great stream. I certainly appreciate it. If you wouldn't mind hitting that thumbs up on the way out the door, I certainly would appreciate that. And thanks so much for the love and support, guys, on my comeback here. It's been great. I love just being back in the lab with you guys. It's been awesome. It's been a lot of fun. So I'll see you guys back on Monday. Monday, we don't have too much on earnings, but I'm going to give you a preview on some of the other earnings that we're expecting for the week. We got a big lineup for earnings next week. Too many to name, but there are so many. Snap, some of the other big tech stocks are also going to be reporting. So I'm looking forward to it. I hope you guys are too. Until then, be safe. Have a great weekend, and I'll catch you on Monday. Love you all. Bye.